Did Joel Embiid lose the MVP? Just how good was Paul George in his return? And what even do the Lakers do? It's the Wednesday edition of Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association. And on Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and I host the Locked On Celtics podcast.
And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We're free and available 5 days a week, covering the biggest stories here. And there were a lot of them, despite not a ton of games, John. So let's get right into the thick of it with the MVP discussion, with the Milwaukee Bucks beating the Philadelphia 76ers 118-116. Giannis with the block, the game-winning block of Embiid as the final play of the game. It was initially ruled a goaltend. They reviewed it. They gave Giannis the block, and that was all she wrote. What'd you think of that final play with James Harden taking that three out of a timeout call instead of trying to get the ball to the guy who arguably has been in the MVP conversation all season long, in Joel Embiid?
So I'm really not that upset about that play. That's actually, when you look at it, it's kind of why you shoot when you shoot. You shoot it so you leave enough time to get a rebound and a putback. And that's exactly what happened. And actually, when you have Harden and Embiid, Embiid's one of the MVP candidates. We're going to discuss that. But you also got Harden to take shots like that as well. Like, it can be one, it can be the other. With that little time on the clock, you shoot that shot. That's fine. Embiid got the rebound. He went for the putback. Giannis made an unbelievable play. Unreal, just a defensive player of the year type of play. And that was the difference in the game. Like, one MVP candidate made an MVP level play, and that's the end of it to me. So the play that Philly ran is fine because they actually did get the rebound. And if it was against any other team, that's a putback and a win.
Yeah, look, it was also not supposed to be necessarily that pull-up three from James Harden, who had his first 30-point game for the Sixers. So it's not like he was playing terrible either in this, right? Like, he was feeling it and he was doing very well. And yeah, they were trying to run a pick and roll with him, and it was just defended unbelievably well by Milwaukee. And as you mentioned, right, Joel Embiid gets that rebound. He had the mismatch. He had Drew Holiday on him. He's going to out-rebound that guy almost every single time. It was just an incredible play from Giannis, who... that dude is still good, and that Bucks team is really, really good. Not all of a sudden, I don't want to say, but they went through a little bit of growing pains there. But 40 points, 14 rebounds for Giannis. Also, 7 of 10 from free throw range from the line, which is really good for him too. So just
that's the Giannis. Man. That's the Giannis MVP right there, man. He's been shooting better from the line. He's been doing all of this stuff. Milwaukee has been kind of coasting a little bit Now they're turning it on. This is exactly what the reigning champions are kind of supposed to do. This is the formula. And Giannis has been awesome. He was awesome in this game. You had MVP candidate versus MVP candidate. And I will say, once again, an MVP candidate walks into Philly and wins, which hurts Joel Embiid's candidacy. But I will give you this hot take. Well, not a hot take, but a mildly warm take, that Joel Embiid was the only real loser in this game. Milwaukee won because they won, and they got a great fourth quarter. They had to make a comeback. Remember, this was a fourth quarter comeback for Milwaukee. Great fourth quarter from all three of their big three. Philly got a great game from Harden. They got a great game from Tobias Harris. They got a great game from Joel Embiid. If there's anything encouraging for Philly, I say, look, they win by having those three guys look like they might actually be starting to figure this out. And they also win by losing and dropping down into the fourth seed, which is, I think, where Philly kind of wants to be. They get a Chicago matchup in the first round, which I'm sure they will love. And they probably don't care about who they face unless it's Milwaukee. If Milwaukee climbs to the top seed, that's a little bit in flux. But I still think that Philly will gladly avoid a Brooklyn Nets, a potential Brooklyn Nets matchup. They want to be down in that 3-4 area. So they're fine with this loss too. It's Joel and the MVP, the narrative portion of the MVP, having Giannis come into his house, having had Jokic come into his house and win in his house. That's Joel is the only loser in this game to me.
Yeah, I think that summed up really well, actually. Like, they're going to be fine, right? That team is still very, very good. They're going to be just fine. But that's a really good point about Giannis coming in, Jokic having come in. Do you think Joel Embiid's slipping a little bit in the MVP rankings because of that?
Can we play a little real or fake, a little Wednesday real or fake game
there
right
we
now?
go. I love it.
Let's do it. Let's start sprinkling in. Let's go real or fake crazy today. Real or fake. I'm going to say real or fake. Did Joel Embiid lose the MVP in this game? And I'm going to say yes, because again, there are signature plays in these campaigns, right? Like you can mix these numbers into little pieces and make cases. Joel has a very strong case for MVP. Giannis does. Jokic does. There are other guys creeping into the discussion, but those three guys are like the main three. And now you're looking for tiebreakers because any one of these guys can win, and I don't think there's going to be an uproar. What's the tiebreaker? Well, a game like this, or the narrative, like I said, losing to Jokic at home, losing to Giannis at home, and then you have this snapshot of Embiid going up and getting blocked by Giannis. There's like, you're going to start seeing that on the video, the highlight shows. That becomes this kind of this moment that starts to sway the voters, because when you're just inundated with this kind of poetic type of scene of one MVP candidate blocking another, that starts to kind of sway some of the minds that are out there. So you come out of this and people are not sure where to vote. Giannis, I think, takes a little bit of a lead. You're a car racing guy. There are not that many laps to go. And when you take that late lead, then you start to put yourself in a good spot to win this race.
I guess it's, it depends on who you're driving for. I don't know if the last race would have agreed with you in Formula One with that, but no, you're not wrong on some of that, right? Like, this is kind of one of those things where down the stretch, you need to be pretty perfect. You don't have margin for error in an MVP race this tight. And so when you have this signature moment for Giannis with that block, right? A defensive play to win the game is much more rare than a made shot. I think that really does stand out to some people. And I think you make a really good point of, okay, things are tied between Giannis and Embiid. What's going to be the most recent memory that maybe tips one in favor of another? Same for Jokic in there too. And I think with how a guy like Giannis has played so well recently, and he's getting really good in that mid-range, isn't he too? He's looking like a killer in there. I think he's kind of putting to bed some of the voter fatigue for him. And maybe with how well Jokic has played too, they don't often like to keep going for the same guy, and they want to kind of spread this around a little bit to make it more intriguing. But he's playing so well right now. And to be able to dominate this game in the way that he did, you can't ignore that. So I agree with you. I think this probably ended up being the loss that's going to take Embiid out of the MVP race.
Yeah, and you look at some of the more recent games against MVP candidates, a loss to the Boston Celtics. You had who else came in here? There are other MVP candidates that have come into this, come into Philly and lost. When you're looking at the standings, people look at the standings first of all, and you see Philly down at 4, and you go, well, they've slipped a little bit. You also look at their division record. They're not great in their division, and that kind of hurts them a little bit. Just all these little things pile up. And at this point in the MVP voting, you're looking for reasons to actually not vote for a guy, because we know all the reasons to vote for Jokic. We know all the reasons to vote for Giannis, and we know all the reasons to vote for Embiid. And I'm not trying to take away from either of these guys. We're splitting hairs. Now you're trying to the voting has flipped, and you're trying to figure out which two of these three guys, I should say, am I not voting for? That's kind of where we are down the stretch. And I hate to say it, sorry, Philly fans, but these are reasons that people will point to and say, this is why I'm not going to vote for Embiid, because of the standing slip and, the losing on your own home turf. That stuff tends to matter in the minds of some of these voters.
So you mentioned earlier that you think Philly, as a team, it's not the worst thing for them because they fall down the standings and they now maybe avoid the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. Well, the Brooklyn Nets did win over the Detroit Pistons, 130-123. For the Pistons in this one, by the way, Cade Cunningham looking like the first overall pick, 34 points on the night, 13 of 24 from the field, 5 of 11 from deep alongside 6 assists and 2 steals. He's starting to really come in his own, though I don't think he really has a realistic shot at Rookie of the Year. But Nets still getting it done despite it being a little bit closer than they probably would have liked.
Yeah, and look, this is tough for the people who are really making the case, really, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be super dangerous, because the Brooklyn Nets are in that 8-9 range. They lost to the Charlotte Hornets at home. They struggled to beat the Detroit Pistons, who have been playing better since the All-Star break. Let's give the Detroit Pistons their due. Kook Hill and Locked On Pistons feel good about this team because I've seen them up close. They've given the Celtics fits. They have some really good players. So it's not any shame to struggle to beat the Detroit Pistons, but at the same time, this is the Brooklyn Nets. This is supposed to be the big dangerous Brooklyn Nets, and they are fighting to keep that 8th seed so they stay in that 7th, 8th game. So you only have to win once to make the official playoff list there. They shouldn't be losing in the fourth quarter. They shouldn't be struggling to stop Cade Cunningham the way they were. Again, Cade, if he played all season, would be a Rookie of the Year candidate, and he's going to be a future star. But it did also show, hey, look, in the playoffs, you're going to face guys that are better than Cade Cunningham. They can't stop these guys. And I will fully acknowledge that Brooklyn has offensive firepower. They cannot stop people. They cannot stop these teams. And look, they gave up 123 points to the Pistons. What's going to happen when you face better teams that can actually stop you or at least slow you down? I personally would be fine if the Celtics, I cover the Celtics face the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. Fine. I'm not afraid of the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know why so many people I do know why. It's Kevin Durant, but
he scored 41 in this one.
Yeah, I shouldn't say I don't know why, but I mean, I also see past okay, Kevin Durant is him, but the rest doesn't frighten me at all.
Yeah, I'm starting to kind of feel that way with you. Kevin Durant can take you pretty far. Kyrie can still be Kyrie, but at a certain point, you actually have to end possessions for your opponent, and that is not something that they have done a really good job of this season. And seeing them struggle with some teams recently, and you're only going to face better teams in the playoffs, I see why people are starting to fade them a good bit and have been for a little while, and I'm starting to kind of come around to that way of thinking with them.
Look, Andre Drummond's not going to give you 14 points and 13 rebounds every single night. Like there's he had a great game. They tried to pull Hack a Drummond in this game and he hit 4 straight free throws. That's not going to happen. Like let's just be honest here. It takes 41 points from Kevin Durant and they barely squeak by Detroit. And that's not just Detroit being tough. That's just Brooklyn not being a good defensive team.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think that's totally fair to say. So coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA, Paul George back for the Clippers.
Woo!
And that paid some dividends for the Clippers against the Utah Jazz after being down 25 points and still getting the win. Let's talk about it coming up here next to today's episode of Locked On NBA. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Prize Picks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We love this, and I know you will too. And it's super easy. You just pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing other players, ones with more time than you, more like 10 monitors set up and algorithms and machine learning, figuring out the best secret plays. You see the numbers right there. You pick above it or below it, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really that easy. And PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Plus, you get to use the award-winning app that's available both on the App Store and Google Play. And PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, steals. And PrizePicks doesn't just offer the NBA. They have options for college basketball, college football, and the NFL when they're in season. We're getting baseball right around the corner, soccer, MMA, and more. So for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our listeners. Our listeners get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point, but you've got to use promo code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available for Locked On listeners. Sign up today. Use promo code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores one single point. All right. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can't just look at a box score and get all the context around the Chicago Bulls beating the Washington Wizards 107-94. Go listen to Locked On Now to understand what went on in that game. We've got it, all the coverage here on Locked On. All right, John, I was kind of excited to see Paul George back in the lineup. I think it's been 42 games he's missed. He hasn't played since December. I was not expecting this. I was not expecting this type of performance in this type of game. The late game coming in hot. The Clippers win 121-115 over the Utah Jazz. The same Clippers team that was down 25 points to the Utah Jazz and are just fueled in the fourth, winning that quarter 39-21. I don't know if I'm more impressed by what the Clippers did, more horrified by what the Jazz did here, which was basically nothing. But Paul George, freaking good.
Yeah.
Like really tremendous in this game. 34 points. 4 steals, terrorizing Donovan Mitchell in this game. 6 of 9 from 3, 8 of 11 from the free throw line. He was awesome. Like I'm a little bit like blown away by that one.
Everywhere. He was everywhere. He did everything. Very impressive. I wonder what his next game is going to be like. He's going to probably be pretty sore after this one, but he was super, super impressive. Very aggressive, both ends of the floor. Again, defensive stopper, a very pure Paul George. When you said at the beginning of the season, your dark horse candidate for MVP was Paul George, this is
what could have been
what you're talking about. If he didn't get hurt and he was pulling this kind of stuff without Kawhi, this is the type of game you're talking about. But look, what a perfect combination for this comeback. You have the Utah Jazz. I tweeted out a stat. Their overall net rating for the season is plus 5.3, I think. Their fourth quarter net rating since the All-Star break, because they've been horrible since the All-Star break. Their fourth quarter net rating since the All-Star break is a minus 10. They're like in the bottom 5 in the NBA. They are terrible in the fourth quarter. This is a constant problem for them. Teams take away the pick and roll with Rudy Gobert. They are not letting those lobs come through. And the Utah Jazz are not passing the ball. They're taking pull-up shots, and it's just about a matter of, is Donovan Mitchell going to hit his pull-up shots? Is Jordan Clarkson going to hit his pull-up shots? And if they're not, they're primed for a collapse. And then on the other side, you have the team that keeps coming back from 20-point deficits. So the Clippers are the comeback kings. The Jazz are the collapse kings. And it just big thunderclap collided in the fourth quarter, and you got what you got. And it was just kind of wild to watch it all unravel to the point where Donovan Mitchell tries to call a timeout that he didn't have and gets a technical foul at the very end, just as the cherry on top of this crap Sunday for the Utah Jazz. Jazz have a real problem. These fourth quarter collapses are a serious issue for them.
Now, look, I believe the phrase is live rent free in their heads, and that's something the Clippers definitely do to the Jazz here a little bit. Going back to playoff series. Hold on. The timeout that he didn't have was wild to me.
Yeah.
It's just one of those moments, right? That is so funny. He's trying to inbound the ball. He's about to get a 5-second call, and he looks at the ref and goes, timeout. And the ref doesn't give it to him because the ref knows they don't have a timeout.
Kind
and
of
he
gives that
screams at the ref.
That little like, don't do it. He gave him a
the
little.
Ref was like, no, like trying to help him.
Yeah,
and then he screams at the ref and it's like emphatic, like, call the timeout. So the ref calls the timeout, and then they immediately give the technical, and it was just, oh wow, like that just kind of defines the collapse that the Utah Jazz had. They like Rudy Gobert in that fourth, I thought was rough, right? Hartenstein was outplaying him for a good chunk of that. He couldn't get a rebound, and it seemed like he was doing so much work down low for almost like virtually no return. And I thought that was a big part of the reason why the Clippers managed to come back and win this game was just, as you mentioned, kind of like neutralizing Rudy Gobert and then taking away those lobs on offense. He only took one shot in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, this is a consistent thing when you watch the Jazz. They no longer pass the ball. It's all individual stuff. It's all ISO, which is a huge departure from what I'm surprised that they got 23 assists in this game. They generally are pulling up, in that fourth quarter it was all pull-ups. It was all or one pass and a shot. And that you didn't get anything.
They had one assist in the fourth.
That's what I'm talking about. So you got nothing from Jordan Clarkson really in the fourth. Donovan Mitchell was okay, but still missing too much. Jordan Clarkson was a -25 on the night, so he was there for the entire collapse. This is just a problem with the Jazz. And so let's go real or fake again, Jake. I'm throwing the real or fakes in impromptu. Real or fake, man, this Utah Jazz is unsustainable the way they are currently built. One of these guys is going to go in the offseason. And I'm talking about a Rudy Gobert or Donovan Mitchell, or a big name Utah Jazz player is going to be moved this offseason because this is broken.
So I agree with you that we've probably seen them hit their potential, and just like we've seen them hit their ceiling. And so you've got to make some changes. But I actually am going to say fake on this. I don't think it's a player that's going to go. I think it'll be a name, but it's their coach, Quinn Snyder, who I think is gone.
Well, I think you can add both. Because I agree with you. I think Quinn Snyder is gone. I agree that Quinn Snyder is gone. I think the rumors are true. Listening to what other people are saying about the rumors, I think that there's certainly something behind that. You may be right, and they may say, let's see if another coach can figure this out.
I think it's that, right? If you fire your coach, it buys you a little bit more time with this roster to see if you can figure it out. It also might mean you let a guy like Donovan Mitchell more or less kind of pick the next head coach of this team. We've heard some rumors that maybe he's unhappy too, so maybe they go that route to try and appease him a little bit and get him to buy in and really be committed. But it feels like Quinn Snyder for sure is gone. If they do that, I don't think they're going to panic enough to move any of the players. If for some reason they keep Quinn Snyder, and look, there's reasons to keep him, then yeah, you're mixing up this roster.
Yeah. I wonder if Danny Ainge is going to call Brad Stevens and say, hey, buddy, want to reunite? You feel like you get that itch to get back on the sidelines? I don't think he does. By the way, I do not think that Brad Stevens does. I've had conversations just around the team. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I just wonder if that call is going to come in if Quinn decides to go. But look, I also do not put it past Danny Ainge to say, man, this Rudy Gobert thing, it's not working here. Or maybe it's Donovan Mitchell. I don't think those two guys are going to be antsy to run this thing back. They might say, let's see if a coach can figure this out. and then by next trade deadline come
It
up
could be
with
different.
something.
Yeah.
That could be the way they go. But I will. Okay, so I'll say it's real that they at least sniff around. But I agree with you. It's going to be the coach. And if we extend it out to the next trade deadline, it'll be real.
There you go.
Stretching the parameters a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you got to try and win at this, right? That's the point. You play to win the game. You're here to win a championship of real or fake. Let me throw a real or fake at you, though, going back to Paul George.
Ooh, okay. We're just going willy-nilly.
Let's have some fun on this. And we got a real or fake for the next segment with the Lakers. That's going to be a doozy, too. So make sure you all stay tuned for that one coming up here next. Real or fake, though, are the Clippers a bit of a dark horse title contender with Paul George?
Not with just Paul George. That's fake. But if they get Kawhi back, then they are. That is real.
Yeah, I agree.
But if it's just Paul George, but just Paul George, I'll give you this. Just Paul George can buy you time. And the real question is, are the Clippers going to be the 8th seed and face the Suns, which will be not great? Or are they going to be the 7th seed and face the Grizzlies? The Grizzlies are better, but they're young. And you could say that there's, the Clippers defense can figure out ways to slow down the Grizzlies offense. And maybe there's a chance there. You might get the Paul George wills you to a first round win, and then you get Kawhi, and now you're off to the races. I don't think Paul George can do it all the way through. And even then, knowing that Phoenix and Memphis are going to be your top 2 seeds, I'm not entirely confident in that happening, but Paul George certainly helps raise that standards, and they're long, and I just like that their defensive presence. I think that gives them a shot.
I'm with you for the most part. That was a quick real or fake there. If they're the 8th seed and they play the Suns in the first round, no, Paul George isn't going to help you beat that. He's going to help you beat that team, but you're not going to beat that team, is what I'm trying to say. The Suns are really good. All right, coming up though, let's talk about the other LA team, because they played a game, though I'm sure they wish they didn't, and I'm sure Lakers fans.
But did they though?
They did, but did they
really?
But first, John, what Built Bars are you eating right now?
Oh, I just got a delivery. Double chocolate and salted caramel. Brand new box. Cracked them open a few hours ago.
Salted caramel is like a candy bar, and that's what all Built Bars are like. They taste like a candy bar. They have the consistency of a candy bar. They're like no protein bars you've ever had, and that's why they're the best tasting protein bars out there. They're not chalky. They're not dry. They're not like dense like a brick. I've tried some that are kind of metallic-y, and you don't want anything like that. John, I know you love the salted caramel. The double chocolate is a secretly good flavor.
Oh my God. Too. And it's only 130 calories. So like, I spent 45 minutes on the treadmill because I've got some winter weight that I need to work off. And like, you put that much time in on a treadmill, eating a Built Bar that's giving me 17 grams of protein, but only 130 calories, which means I'm still burning more than I take in. And I get a little reward because double chocolate. I give myself a little reward. Congratulations, John. Yay. You did 45 minutes on the treadmill. Have a double chocolate bar.
These are like my secret weapon. I get like big sugar cravings at times. So I've cut Built Bars up into little chunks so that when I need to kind of like get that fix, I eat one of these bites. And I feel so much better about my life. And it's not like I'm going to grab a candy bar or other like snacky things. I also travel a lot for work, hence being in a hotel. I have these in my bag all the time just to keep me kind of fueled up on the go. So if you want to give Built Bars a try, and you absolutely should, go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that is promo code LOCK15. It's what John and I use whenever we order Built Bars, for 15% off over at built.com. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. We're free and available 5 days a week, breaking down the biggest stories around the association. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, available on YouTube. Tell a friend about the show too, and leave a 5-star review with a comment. Okay, this is the segment that I've been looking forward to here. We got one more final game, but as John said in the last segment, was it really a game? 128-110, the Dallas Mavericks over the Los Angeles Lakers. I could probably talk way longer than I should about this game. No Anthony Davis, no LeBron James. So we shouldn't really expect them to win, right? Like this is kind of about what we expected with this Lakers team. But this was still a horrible performance from these guys. It begs so with the Pelicans kind of being in front of the Lakers for the play-in tournament in the 9th seed right now. I went on Locked On Lakers the other day, been on a couple of other Lakers podcasts too. They're all miserable covering this team too. And in some capacity, the question comes up of, do they need to consider trading LeBron James or Anthony Davis? And Brian Windhorst talked about it on ESPN. Like, we don't need to touch this game because Luka was good and no one was good on the Lakers. But real or fake, John, the Lakers are going to have discussions with other teams about, let's start with Anthony Davis this offseason.
I'm going to say fake because they don't own any of their future draft picks. And there's just no reason for them to go into the tank and like normally in a situation like this, when you have a couple of aging veterans, you say, all right, look, good run. You got a championship out of it. LeBron is kind of towards the end of his run. Whatever. Somebody's going to want him. Somebody's going to give you a ton for Anthony Davis. Sell off, get all these draft picks and just, tank. You have your picks and other people's picks and you pull the Houston, OKC, Orlando, all of that stuff. But they don't have their own picks. So they can't just rely on other teams' picks because who's going to be trading for Anthony Davis? Teams that are looking for a guy that takes them to the next level. So let's say, again, I'll use my team as a hypothetical. The Boston Celtics say, yeah, Anthony Davis, sure, we'll give you a couple of these guys and our future picks and all of these pick swaps. Great. And now you got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Anthony Davis, and you're contending for championships. So you're the Lakers, you go into the tank and you're getting what? The 28th, the 29th, the 30th overall picks? That's not worth it. If you're the Lakers, you just say, you've tried to figure things out and you have no choice but to kind of run it back, and hopefully you can find minimum contract magic somewhere else. But you got to find a way to just try it again and maybe find somebody to take Russell Westbrook. I don't know. I really don't know what their actual plan of attack, but going into the tank just prolongs the agony because it's not going to work like it normally would.
I was really hoping you were going to say real, because I was going to come in and say fake, and we could at least disagree on this one a little bit.
We should have coordinated that. The problem is we're too reasonable. Right? We're just too reasonable.
Sorry. No, I'm with you, right? Like, so the one thing with like Anthony Davis, right, and is I think you're starting to kind of see a new consensus about him that he's just probably not the number one guy on a team. And I'm not saying that as like a salty Pelicans fan or anything like that. I would
agree with you. Yeah.
I think everyone at this point is like, you're right. He's your number two guy and a really good number two, maybe the best number two you could get in the league, but he's not a number one. So teams trading for him might offer you a little bit less than what the Lakers gave up to get him in the first place. And so it almost then looks like you lose that trade with the Pelicans to a certain degree if you trade him then later for less, and that doesn't look great. And as you said, right, they don't own any of their future first round picks. So if you trade him and get picks and you start trying to rebuild, you're hoping to draft a guy as good as Anthony Davis and then develop him to be as good as Anthony Davis or LeBron James, right? Even LeBron now would be a very good draft pick if they turned out like that. What's the point of tanking? What's the point of blowing it up? I've seen I think Lakers fans are very frustrated right now and want to blow it up just to kind of like spite everyone on that team. And look, they're putrid right now and things are rough. And Frank Vogel's just got like nothing and doesn't know what to do with these guys. But it feels like you're just stuck with this. Maybe you can move on from Russ, or maybe you bring in a new coach, I don't know, like Quinn Snyder, to try and really figure out what, to just do something. But to trade any of these guys would not help you at all. And that's only going to prolong the rebuild they're eventually going to need to go through. I keep looking at Oklahoma City as an example of this, right? They should start to be contending right now, particularly with Gilgeous-Alexander being so good. But they don't have another true, and maybe they got it in Josh Giddey this year, but they haven't landed on that other true blue chip prospect to kind of be his running mate and to build around. And if you don't have that, it means you need to tank a little bit longer, or you should be tanking longer and trying to draft that guy. The Lakers with bad draft picks aren't going to find that guy just like that. If you're a Lakers fan, this is a terrible situation to be in, but you probably already know that.
Yeah, I mean, just look, just be thankful you won the championship. You got your championship out of it. And I know it's the Lakers, and the Lakers want to be, you won only one championship. Yeah, that's kind of how it works nowadays. And, be glad that you got the one that you did, because if it wasn't for the bubble, you were going down the same road of LeBron nagging injuries, Anthony Davis nagging injuries, and really limping into the playoffs. And who knows what had happened. If you didn't get those 3 months off, I don't even know that you get that one championship. So be glad that you got the one and say, all right, you now it's on to the next one, because they are stuck. They are stuck. And let's face it, LeBron's and Anthony Davis' insistence that the front office go get Westbrook, they're pressuring the front office to do this, backfired, and they all need to take the responsibility. LeBron being passive aggressive the way he has been over the past couple of months doesn't help anything. It doesn't change anything. You guys co-signed this. You guys wanted this, and it has backfired. Literally the only hope that the Lakers have moving forward is Russell Westbrook sitting down and having some sort of epiphany and some moment of self-realization and saying, you know what? I know what I used to do, and I can't do that anymore. And now I have to change. If we are going to succeed next year, I have to change. And if Russell Westbrook changes and gets into, more of that pick setting role that people talk about, a certain style of play that doesn't involve taking 3-pointers and kind of understanding that you are a reduced role type of player, if he does that, then the Lakers might actually have some hope next year. But if he says, I'm Russ and I'm always going to be Russ, then I'm sorry. You're just not Russ anymore. And that fit doesn't work anymore. If that's the Westbrook that comes in next season, you're going to see something similar to this season.
You need him to be Rocky from Rocky 4. If I can change and you can change, everybody can change.
Exactly. And I think
I just had that played in my head when you were saying that there.
I think also Lakers fans want him to be from Rocky 4 so they can just send him to Russia.
Just get rid of him, right?
Just go to Russia.
Go or somewhere in the snow, not Los Angeles, right? Get out of here, go play for another team. And I think that is, you saw it, the frustration is really boiling over. He was getting into it with the reporters after the game on what I thought wasn't the best question to him, but things are not good there when it comes to the Lakers and all of that. So they'll have more over the Locked On Lakers podcast covering what might be, now that they're not in the play-in tournament even more now.
They fell out of the play-in after this.
And you got to wonder how much they actually just even do they really want to extend their season? And I'm not sure that they actually do.
Can we just throw Nick Angstadt a bone and just say Luka Doncic was awesome with
Luka was good.
Double, 34 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists. I don't want to completely blow past that. Just because Nick's the boss of the channel and he's going to be I can't believe you guys didn't mention the triple-double.
Okay, there you go. So Luka had a triple-double.
Luka was awesome. Here's your triple-double.
Go listen to Locked On Mavericks, Locked On Luka. They're a great show and they have a lot of fun on there. There you go. All right. Locked On Luka. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On NBA. On Wednesdays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I am John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and I host the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Don't forget, make Locked On NBA your first listen, subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.